All right, I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome everybody to our Williamsport City Council meeting. It's Thursday, July 6th. We're in Trade and Transit 2, third floor. Please rise for the invocation by Councilman Viter, followed by our flag salute.
Dear Lord, we pray that you guide us as always. Help us satisfy the needs of our community during this meeting. Strengthen us as we make tough decisions. Please guide us so that in this meeting we can be productive. Let us be effective and decisive. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll move to item 3, approval of city council meeting minutes from June 22nd, 2023. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions from members of council? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Mr. Lubin on the motion, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Lizzie.
Yes.
Mr. Viter.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passed to 7-0. Item 4, limited courtesy of the floor. We have had one request tonight. Mr. Huffman, you're welcome to take the podium. If you would state which item on the agenda it's for, and then you're welcome to proceed with your comments. Good evening. Can you turn him on, Chris?
Is it on now?
Yep, thank you,
Okay.
Bruce. Apologies.
I'm Bruce Huffman, 1000 Cherry Street in the city. Council President, Vice President, Councilors, Mayor, I guess he's not here, Administration and citizens. Regarding agenda item 9, the agreement for the city to lease a portion of Brandon Park to Lycoming College to construct a collegiate baseball facility. When this proposal was first brought forth by Lycoming College at a public works meeting on December 6, 2022, it was stated that there would be public meetings to inform the citizens and residents of the plans and impacts of this proposal. I don't believe any meetings have occurred in the last 7 months. At the Finance Committee meeting of Wednesday, very little was shared regarding the numerous details of the agreement. There was no news article in the Sun Gazette about yesterday's meeting stating what was discussed, or even letting the public know that this agreement was to be voted on tonight. I'm very concerned that the public has no clear understanding of how this agreement to lease 5.81 acres, or about 1/7 of Brandon Park for 25 years will affect them. What do the architectural plans for the collegiate baseball facility look like? How many trees will be lost? What driveways, curbs, sidewalks, or other paved surfaces will cover the ground? What about signage, lighting, fencing, and parking impacts? A Department of Conservation and Natural Resources declaration of restrictions for Brandon Park by the city of Williamsport states that, quote, no change of use and no transfer of ownership, control, or interest in the property may occur, and no encumbrance may be placed on this property without the written consent of the department. Has the city ever received this written consent? As I stated at the city council meeting 2 weeks ago, the Donated and Dedicated Property Act of Pennsylvania requires that political subdivisions use their donated and dedicated lands for the purposes for which they were originally dedicated, or else obtain orphans court approval to do otherwise. Finally, there is a serious issue with this lease agreement, if indeed I have the same one that you have, in that paragraph A, under the title background, is inaccurate. The copy of the Brandon Park deed referenced in that paragraph and attached as Exhibit A is incomplete. Exhibit A shows 2 images of the same first page of the 3-page deed. It also shows an image of the 3rd page of the 3-page deed. Exhibit A does not show or include the actual 2nd page of the deed, which contains the key restrictions and provisions, namely the requirement that the city hold the 43 acres and 39 perches of land, quote, in trust for the purpose only. Let me say that again.
Thank you. That was a long one.
The second page of the deed, which contains the key restrictions and provisions, namely the requirement that the city hold the 43 acres and 39 perches of land, quote, in trust for the purpose only of an open space or park for the use of the public forever, and to be called and known as Brandon Park. That is not in that agreement. Based on everything I've stated, I respectfully ask that item 9 be tabled until more information can be obtained to answer all the questions I have raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huffman. We're going to jump around here a little bit because we have some guests both here and remotely. So bear with me. We'll jump to item 13. Resolution approved authorizing the petition for exemption. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Nar, good evening.
Good evening, President Yoder, members of council. What I present to you is a resolution authorizing the waiver of the noise exemption rule under the PLCB regulations. To give you a little bit of background and history, back in 2015, we went through the process and we adopted the entertainment ordinance district. Under PLCB rules, no music, or whether it be live or amplified, can be emanated outside the building structure under PLCB rules. However, you do have the ability to ask for an exemption, and that's what the city went through the process. And we did that. We created 3 different zones within the city where most of these PLCB establishments are geared towards. So what we did was we created the entertainment ordinance. We modified the noise ordinance. We had public hearings in those 3 different zones based off of the maps that you do have. And at that point, we submitted that application after the hearings went through to PLCB. PLCB did grant us the noise exemption on a 3-year basis. In 2018, we went back to them, asked them for another extension of that noise enforcement. It did go before council as well, and council granted that resolution, and we went through that process again. Now, here we are in 2023. This time they actually granted us a 5-year, so it is currently up. And at this point, what we have to do is, in order for these establishments to have amplified music or have live music or acoustic music outside of the brick and mortar buildings under PLCB rules, has to go back through this process. So once again, what we will do, just like we did 3 years or 5 years ago, is we will create 3 sets of hearings. PLCB will come up. They will hear basically the residents in those areas, those 3 different zones. We'll hold 3 different hearings. Once the hearings have concluded, then at that point, it'll be up to PLCB to determine whether they're going to grant us the extension again. If they choose to do so, they have the ability to grant it for either 3 or 5 years. Hopefully it'll be 5 years. So that would be hopefully my last time to present this, as we began this in 2014. But that's basically what this resolution states. It's a formality that we've done since 2015 when I created this entertainment ordinance with several of the local businesses that had affected it. The only change in that, and you do not have that on your map, but on the map that we are submitting to PLCB will be an extension of the western part of the zone, which if you look at it closely, it does not encompass New Trail. What we did is extended the zone map, which will encompass New Trail, so they have that ability. And at that point, we'll still hold the hearing within that zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3, and go through that process. That's the only change since 2015. And it was, obviously, the resolution was reviewed by Norm Lubin and went through ERC.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Nar. Mr. Biter from ERC, anything to add from the conversation yesterday?
No, Mr. Nar covered everything. The only question that we had when we looked at the map as far as what was included and not included was the addition of New Trail that came up. Other than that, everything looked good to us.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Bider. Any comments or questions, Ms. Mealy?
Just one quick question, Gary.
Can you speak up to the close to the mic?
Yeah, sorry,
Yep,
just,
no worries.
just one quick question, Gary. If the PLCB were for some reason to receive negative commentary from people in one of these districts, but not in the other two, could they authorize?
They have that
Okay.
ability. I can
But we
tell
wouldn't
you,
have to go back through.
it
the
would
whole
not have to
process.
go back to it. They could say, we're going to go through these two and we're not going to exempt the other one. I can tell you, we did have feedback in each one of those zones the last two times. Some of them weren't relatively negative, but they were just cautious. And once PLCB and the city explained how we would be enforcing it and that type of thing. So, and they were, all of the residents at that point were fine.
Good. Yeah, I'm not anticipating that. I'm just trying to make sure that by doing one group application, we're not making ourselves.
Correct. And that's what will happen is when they send us back, it'll have basically each separate resolution from their body saying that they're going to approve this zone, they're approving this zone, they're approving this zone. And again, it can be anywhere from 3 to 5 years.
Okay, thanks, Gary.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing and seeing none, Mr. Lubin on the motion, please, for item 13.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Katz, Mrs.
Yes.
Katz. I thought he was gonna burn it.
I know.
Answer it.
I answered.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes, motion passes 7-0. We'll move to item 14, a certificate of appropriateness at 201 Basin Street. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, Mr. Nar.
Good evening. What we present to you is a certificate of appropriate request from the business River Valley Plaza located at 201 Basin Street. What this certificate of appropriateness is for is they are located within the central business district. Anything to the exterior of the building is required to go through a process to meet the current downtown design standards. As the images that you do have, as you can see, they're going to do a complete overhaul of the building facade. What you see is there will be some brick, basically like an off-white brick area. They will have wood siding, which is a darker walnut type of facility, as well as it looks like a copper type of plating as well. In addition, you will see the type of lighting that they will currently have on that. It did go through planning for review. Planning gave it a positive recommendation. And in my opinion, I feel that it does meet the downtown design standards. And as far as the size of the signage and stuff, that will come back before council because they're trying to do a complete packet, which will have not just separate entities, but each one of them will kind of look similar to the same with some branding of individual businesses. This is merely for the facade, not for so much for the signage. They're just showing you that on there. So there's not 10 signage businesses going to be located there.
Any comments or questions from members of council? Ms. Mealy.
This looks really nice. It looks like it'll be a huge improvement to the site. And I think I particularly appreciate like the hardy board instead of vinyl siding, et cetera. I mean, that's within our design standards. But it's just appreciated to see someone bring in an application that meets those standards before review. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mealy. Any other comments or questions? Hearing and seeing none, Mr. Lubin on the motion for item 14.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes, motion passes 7-0. And then item 15 is another certificate of appropriateness at 411 Hepburn Street. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Motion and a second, Mr. Nar.
Again, what we have before you is a certificate of appropriateness request. The property is located at 433 Hepburn Street. It is the plaza. It is located within the central business district, and they are going to, obviously, it is the fine wine and actually it'll say fine wine and good spirits. Is the branding of the wine store, food and wine store that they're going to basically do. As you can see, you have the existing signage, which was a white with plastic covering on it. This will be more of a darker color as well as white lettering at this point in time. So you see the two difference of it. Size wise, it does meet it. And the type of material that they're going to be utilized will be more of a combination of some plastic as well as some wood structure.
Thank you, Mr. Nar. Any comments or questions from members of council? Okay, hearing see none, Mr. Lubin on the motion, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Quizzy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Hart.
Yep, thank you.
We will jump up to, is Dr. Chalky on?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Let's jump up to item 9, resolution authorizing execution of agreement between the city of Williamsport and Lycoming College. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mayor Slaughter, welcome, sir, and good evening.
Good evening, President Yoder, Vice President Katz, members of council and the administration. What you have before you is a lease agreement between the city and Lycoming College for Brandon, the senior field at Brandon Park. As you all know, we've been talking about this for quite some time now. This would allow the college, as we know, they have a baseball program now. They played this year at Bowman Field, but are in need of a home field. And so this would give them that home field that is obviously located close to their campus. The initial term for this, I believe, is 25 years. And then it would be a renewal thereafter for 10 years unless either party gives 24-month notice. This was worked on by Ann Pepperman on behalf of Lycoming College and Norm Lubin on behalf of the city. Obviously, the administration and city council both worked together on this agreement as well. So a lot of time and effort went into it, and I appreciate council's time spent on it as well. And it was reviewed in finance yesterday. And we have Dr. Chalky on, as you mentioned, President.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. We can go either way. I know Dr. Chalky probably has a couple of comments, but you're welcome to speak to the. I think you probably should like to talk. Sounds good. Dr. Chalky, if you would like to speak to the agreement, and I'll counter. I'll preface this. Dr. Chalky asked about doing a presentation remotely, and I didn't think it would be needed. I think after Mr. Huffman's comments, it probably would be. That's on me though. So not necessarily college, so my apologies. But nonetheless, Dr. Chalky is here and can speak to, I think, kind of the background, what they're intending to do, some of the conversations that they had with the administration, with a couple of members of council. And I think he could probably address a lot of Mr. Huffman's questions specifically. But if not, we can deliberate on what we'd like to, how we'd like to proceed regardless. So Dr. Chalky, if you're there, I'll give you the floor to speak to the opportunity here.
I am here, President Yoder. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you pretty well.
Okay. I'm coming from the other side of the ocean tonight, so I wasn't quite sure about how the connection would be. Anyway, I want to begin by thanking both the administration and the council and also the Brandon Park Commission for working with the college and developing this concept. We approached the administration probably almost a year ago about whether it would be feasible for the college to absorb the cost of the construction of a collegiate quality baseball field in Brandon Park. We understand, and I will be glad to elaborate upon the fact that we will provide opportunities for public use, and we will have a system in place for all of that. As the mayor mentioned, we resurrected the baseball program at Lycoming College this past year, and we are in need of a home field. The college, quite frankly, sees this as a win-win for the city and the college. I think anyone who has looked at the current field, senior field in Brandon Park, knows that it's not in good condition and really needs some significant investment. The college proposes to spend $2.5 million of its capital to put in a turf field Also the appropriate stands and fencing and also netting to protect the neighborhood and so on and so forth. Ultimately, some lighting will be added as well. I'm not sure I remember all of Mr. Huffman's questions, and I wasn't anticipating him speaking, so I didn't have any materials to take any notes. But if someone wants to repeat them, I'm sure that either Mr. Lubin or I could respond to a number of the questions that he raised.
And by all means, chime in here, other members, if I missed anything. Parking, deed, questions. Those were the two initial ones that I had caught. Paving.
How many trees are going to be removed?
Trees removed. What am I missing for?
So there's no plan to add additional parking in the current design that we're working with. We anticipate utilizing the parking along this street that is currently provided. Division III baseball games do not have thousands of fans in attendance. Our students and other members of our community can easily walk from campus, and we will be communicating with them our expectation that happens. So there is no plan to asphalt or turn parts of the park into concrete for parking. I know we've been working to not have to remove any trees. I think there was still a possibility that one tree might need to be moved, but we will obviously work with the administration and the city on that. The orientation of the field is essentially the same as the existing field. It's a little bit larger in terms of the outfield walls. I also know that, and the mayor can speak to the question about needing to contact a state government agency. And I think, Mr. Lubin, that you and Attorney Pepperman went carefully through the deed agreement to ensure that lease is consistent with it. If there are other questions that I can answer, I'll be glad to answer them.
There was the question about, I think, DCNR approval.
Yep.
We have that.
Yep.
I believe.
Yep, we
Correct.
talked to DCNR. Yep,
Yes,
they're aware of the
and-
project
And
and
we have that written.
correct, yep.
Yes. Yes. Mr. Lubin. Okay.
On the missing page from the deed, it should be noted that the lease agreement should require all 3 pages. But from the beginning, Ms. Pepperman and I were well aware of the deed restriction. And that's why it's placed in there that it's available to the general public when the college is not using it. So there was no intent to try to hide that. And I think Mr. Hoffman knows us well enough that we wouldn't have. And actually, I guess because I always had a copy of the lease. I never really compared the lease that's attached. But actually, when the signed copies are circulated, it will have the complete lease or complete deed, because the lease itself references the record book and deed book pages. So, but that was something that was discussed almost from the beginning. The deed restriction, we were well aware of it. In fact, with my copy of the city codified ordinances, I have a handwritten note listing the deed restriction. So it wasn't anything that was surprising in this.
Okay. I think that captured a lot of your questions, Bruce. If we're missing something, by all means, speak up. I didn't get a chance to write down all of yours off of memory. I think it caught most of them. But if I'm missing something, please tell me. You're welcome to come up and I'll invite you up if you would like to. Understood. I appreciate that, Bruce. Okay. This was reviewed in finance. Ms. Mealy, anything to add from the conversation in finance?
I think that primarily the conversation in finance, because this has gone back and forth between council, the administration, and Lycoming College a handful of times. I think most of us felt as though a lot of our concerns have been met with the document. And certainly in finance, that seemed to be the case. We had two elements of conversation, one of which was that while the field will remain available for public use, as I noted in the finance committee, the concept of public use is limited in this instance. That is to say, for instance, in paragraph D under item 9, users of the baseball facility shall be responsible for damages to the baseball facility and or additional facilities. College may require users to have property and liability insurance. That is to say, this is when I was up in Brandon Park the other day in the playground, there were some guys just playing like a game of pickup ball on the field. Unless you can tell me differently, Dr. Trotke, I'm assuming that will no longer be a possibility. The field will be publicly available if someone applies and basically sets up a time to utilize the field. And presumably that would, generally speaking, be an organization, not just a group of individuals. Is that correct?
I think generally it would be an organization, but I wouldn't want to preclude a group of individuals from organizing something. I think it's important to the college, to know who's using it and when they're using it. Obviously, if it's just a group of individuals, we'd have to consider, issues of liability and so on. If there's an interest in that, Ms. Mealy, we can figure out how to do something like that. I could very much see, I would add, I could very much see, we're very much anticipating that our baseball coach is going to hold instructional opportunities for youth in the community. This is a real opportunity for him to put Lycoming baseball in front of young people in the community. And that's one of the definite uses that we anticipate. So there will be opportunities for youth as well as organizations to use the field.
Oh yeah, Dr. Trotke, I'm not, to be honest, this isn't necessarily something that I see as a problem. I'm just trying to clarify that the concept of public use in that field is changing from what it is today. But in conversation with the mayor, the city does still have a handful of fields within the city that could be considered to be basically places where you could play a game of pickup ball. I certainly think that it would be appreciated on the part of the city if the college just, I think as this moves into effect, we'll have to kind of read the room in terms of read the city, that is to say, in terms of what potential public use there's interest in. Because certainly if it proves to be a viable option to allow the field to be open for, pickup games or something like that, that would be terrific. But I can foresee, given the investment that the college is making in the field, an investment that we all well know the city is not in a position to make in the field, that simply allowing random people to utilize the field may not be a possibility. But that was one of our points of conversation. And I think, Derek, you mentioned Shaw Place, potentially Young's Woods. And I would encourage us, as we're moving forward with that project in Young's Woods, to maybe try and put some time into that ball field to make it a bit more playable. I think the backstop's in rough shape, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Shaw and Young's are both in need of some TLC.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Anyway, I know that we're doing work in both of those parks coming up, hopefully, so we should try to make that an element of the work. That said, I think the only other, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, the only other item of discussion that I remember from finance was a point that I made that once again was not particularly related to the college, but the city has had some ongoing issues in the park with people driving across portions of the park to access either the lower ball fields or the upper ball fields. And I think we will, the city may need to take some sort of action to try and prevent that elsewhere in the park. And we discussed that at finance, but obviously we'll appreciate the college's help to underline that there is no approved access to the park aside from parking in a parking area and walking there. Because we've had problems with that in the past. And I think that as we're doing work on all of the ball fields, this is a good time to just to change the rules, so to speak, about how people park in Brandon Park for baseball related events. That said, as I said, I think that we all feel far more comfortable with this agreement. This will clearly be beneficial both to the college and to the city, and to your point, Dr. Chokti, to hopefully as well to the city youth who are interested in baseball and can benefit from this partnership with the college to get onto a quality field. And my one question raised by this discussion, Dr. Chokti, I'm assuming, or perhaps suggestion, you said that you might be removing a tree or two in the outfield of the ball field. Is that correct?
It would only be one, and
Okay.
I know they've been working to avoid that. And we can, I think the final design has to be approved by the city anyway. I know we've been really trying to avoid removing or moving any tree. I think there was some discussion about trying to move it. But I don't have the latest detail on that, Council.
From my perspective, what I would say about that is the city would obviously appreciate any help Lycoming College wanted to provide in reforesting some of Brandon Park, because we have lost a number of trees there over the last several years. I would suggest that moving a tree might not be wise, especially because so many of our trees in Brandon are, A, that sounds expensive, and B, a lot of our trees in Brandon are getting older, and it might be wise to replace it, to replace the tree if possible with a new tree that would grow up to be a sizable shade tree in the park. But certainly if there's, we can obviously talk about this when we look at site plans, but if there are any trees removed, it might be nice, at least if they were replaced in kind somewhere in the park.
We
Okay.
can, I guarantee that we would do that. Sounds like a great project for some of my students to partner with the parks folks and develop a plan for new plantings in Brandon.
That'd be awesome, because yeah, Chad Eckert, our forester in the city, is really excellent and could, I think, be actually a great person for the college to work with in the park and for college students to encounter. I believe that was everything that we discussed at the finance committee level, but Randy and Eric, did I forget anything?
Insurance.
Insurance. Oh yeah, the numbers for insurance. I did see those numbers come through. Derek, although the document I'm looking at doesn't have them. What were the?
It is, I just sent it out.
$1,000 or I
No,
mean,
no.
$1,000,000.
$1,000.
We got good
$1,000,000
rates.
$1 million minimum. 11, it's 11B.
Yeah,
Yeah.
11B, yeah,
Not less than $1 million.
right, yeah.
Okay. Okay, got it. Yeah, that was Randy's only question.
Yeah.
So Randy, did you have one other question related to this? Am I forgetting something?
Oh, it was just the communication between the college and the administration, who that was going to be.
Mhm.
And Derek covered that it was going to be streets and parks and
Yeah.
What was the other component?
Sean and Scott, and then Chip and Dr. Trachty. I did talk to Chip earlier today as well, Dr. Trachty. Just to Councilman Allison's point about just maintaining a master schedule, the contact between administration and city council once the project comes to fruition. So we know who's using the field, when it's available, when it's open, and what that looks like. Sorry,
Right.
Councilman Allison, not to.
No, that's good. Yeah.
Mhm.
That was the only other thing we talked about.
I would also suggest that we might consider signage at the field, indicating that the field is publicly available, by contacting X, Y, or Z, basically instructing people on how to gain access to the field if they'd like to.
Yep.
Okay.
Agreed.
Mhm.
All right. Any other comments from members of council? Mrs. Katz?
Good evening, Dr. Trachty. This is Bonnie Katz. I just have a couple of questions. One of them is how long is the college baseball season?
The college baseball team would probably start practicing in late February, early March, if we can get the field cleaned of snow, which will probably be there at that time of the year. You're probably more concerned about when it ends. And generally, our schedule would be finished by the second week of May. The only exception to that would be if we were to qualify for the national tournament, and then we might continue practicing, once per day for a couple of weeks after that. So by the second week of May, our schedule would normally be completed.
So therefore, the field really would be vacant during most of the summer, all of summer, really.
Yes.
So we really need to have signage there so that people will know that they have to make arrangements to use the field.
Yeah.
The other question that I have is, when you said it doesn't attract thousands of people, how many people do you think are at games? And the only reason I ask is because we know what it is with the football field and how the
Oh,
parking,
it's way less.
and infiltrates the neighborhood.
Yeah, no, it's way less for baseball would be more similar to soccer or lacrosse, where I would say a large crowd, a councilwoman would be 300. A more typical crowd would be 200 or less. And a good portion of that crowd will just be walking over from campus. So they would not be bringing vehicles.
Fantastic. And any busing of students would also, the buses would be moved down to campus also. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Which we do now at Shangri-La Athletic Complex. Once the visiting team drops off players, they then go and park down on campus until the event is concluded. And then they come back and pick them up. So we already don't have buses blocking. In this case, I think they would just be able to park on campus, and it's only a block and a half to walk over there. So definitely no buses causing congestion on, what is that, Elizabeth Street, I think.
Yes. Yes. I thank you very much. Those are my only questions.
Thank you.
Ms. Mealy.
That actually, thanks for asking that, Bonnie. Raised one more important thing that is not a college issue, but is a city issue and has been for a while. It is a health hazard to attempt to cross Washington Boulevard there at the intersection of Elizabeth Street and Washington Boulevard. For basically anybody, the traffic's moving really quickly through there. And while I appreciate you saying that your students would walk from Lycoming, I would feel better about that if we, that's a state route, I assume?
Is it? Does
It is a state route.
Gary saying?
I would say that we should try as a city to petition PennDOT to give us the right to put a crosswalk in there.
Sure, I can reach out to
Like a protected crosswalk.
Yeah.
Because it is, I mean, I've tried to cross there on foot with a stroller and was afraid I was gonna get my kids killed. And I don't like the idea of a whole bunch of college kids crossing on the way to a game and crossing back. I think that, and I would assume that would be supported by the college, correct, Dr. Tokti?
We'd be glad to collaborate with the city on that. We did actually have a member of our staff very seriously injured about a year and a half ago along Washington Boulevard. And we already have a lot of students that cross there to go to practices or walk up to games. I think it would be safer for everyone, the residents of the neighborhood as well. I know there are residents who come over to the campus to walk and do things like that. To have a crosswalk right there at Elizabeth Street, I think would really add to the safety of the for pedestrians on that street, for cars as well. There's a lot of cars parked along there too.
Yeah, and that's a huge, I would guess that's probably a quarter of a mile between stoplights. You can really get up a good head of steam if you're driving down there, and there's nothing to stop you. So some sort of traffic calming or something like that, if we could talk to PennDOT about it, or a pedestrian crossing like the one they have in Mentorsville would be, something that alerts people to the fact that there are pedestrians crossing when
Yep,
someone
I
wants to.
just made a note.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Dr. Chucky.
Mr. Pelisi.
Thank you. Dr. Chotke, thank you very much for being with us. I know being on the other side of the ocean, there's quite a time difference. So I'll keep my two questions short. One, with the investment of the college putting in the ballpark over at Brandon Park, would it be safe for us then to assume that in the interests of Lycoming College for their protecting their investment, that we would see Lycoming College security forces then driving through Brandon Park, observing the park in the ball field?
Assuming that the city was comfortable with that, absolutely, yes, Councilman.
Okay, to see Lycoming College security and driving through the park, driving around the ballpark. The second question I have, sir, what the time of the games, the days and times of the games? I mean, are the games going to go late into the evening to where they could potentially disrupt the residences? Are you able to speak to what the schedule might be regarding the time of day that the games would be taking place?
Yeah, I'm thinking about that, Councilman. And the mayor might be able to help me here in terms of when the games were held at Bowman Field. I think the majority of the games are actually played in afternoons. But as with in the early spring, same as with our complex for soccer lacrosse up there, it can get dark pretty early. And so we do eventually see ourselves installing lights in order to, not be precluded by darkness. But we're certainly not going to have games going until 10 o'clock at night or something like that, if that's your question.
Yes, sir. That pretty much answered exactly what I was, my question. So thank you very much. I have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mackey.
Just a couple thoughts. I guess to Vince's point, and maybe a little bit to Liz's as well. The intersection at Elizabeth Street and Washington Boulevard, I think another alternative could possibly be like Lycoming College security, putting out signage and being there at that intersection to help people cross the street if necessary. I mean, I'm not opposed to trying to get a crosswalk put in there,
Right.
but I think that's a quicker fix in the interim.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as the off-street parking goes, when you look from, I'm just looking at the map here, from Hughes Street all the way up to Adams, for lack of a better term, there is a whole stretch of off-street parking right there. And I don't know, Gary, maybe you could answer that question. And in rough estimate, how many cars do you think can park from in that stretch of Elizabeth Street there?
You're probably looking at about 25 vehicles, not more.
From Adams all the way down to Hughes, you think about 25 cars? Okay.
We also have the band shell area at park.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and as somebody who used to live directly across the street from the football field, I can personally say I always enjoyed the atmosphere of a Saturday morning football game. It brought a lot of excitement to the neighborhood. So I mean, I'm not going to speak for everybody that lives in that neighborhood, but I can say that it wasn't disruptive at all, in my opinion. And I guess one of the final question is, I just want to make sure I heard Councilwoman Mealy. Did she actually suggest investing more money into baseball fields in the city? I just want to make sure that I heard that
I wasn't going to let
correctly.
that slide, Councilman. Yeah.
Just for the record.
I think that if we are putting money into two other parks,
Right.
we should make
Look
sure
at-
that the fields are
Okay.
usable for pickup ball.
I just wanted to make sure I heard
That
that.
would be a pretty low bar. compared to
Okay.
the $7,000 we're about to put into the wonderful.
All right.
All
I'm
right.
just making sure.
However, I do appreciate your suggestion, John, about a temporary measure on Washington Boulevard, because I think that-
Yeah, I mean,
that we need to take care of that straight out of the gate, and we all know that it can take a while to work through PennDOT to get a crosswalk.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, Vince, to your point, as far as the security goes, I would see them driving past the football field. So I don't see any reason why Lycoming College security can't drive through Brandon Park past the fields just to make sure everything's okay. So that's all I have.
In terms of the parking, I would just add, especially for weekend games, we have plenty of parking lots on that side of campus that we would anticipating making available, and it's a very short walk over to the field from there.
Thank you, Mr. Mackey and Dr. Chalkley. Are there any other comments or questions from other members? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, Mr. Lubin on the motion for item 9, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Dr. Chalkley, thank you for the partnership, the continued partnership here. And for working with us, the continued questions and in advance of this happening. I think the continued collaboration to make sure that this goes well. And perhaps as you get closer to doing work, we should definitely, I don't know if it's at a council meeting or a committee meeting, but have a presentation on what's this going to look like, et cetera. That is a very good point that Mr. Huffman brought forward that we should absolutely do.
Right.
But nonetheless, thank you, Dr. Chalkley, and enjoy your vacation.
Thank you. We'll be glad to do something next week. The design's very far along already at this point, and we'd love to get input from the city and council. And we're anticipating that there's going to be a field there by next spring, unless we run into something unforeseen. We have all the approval from our board and the authorization to spend the 2.5 million to build a facility.
It's exciting. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Okay, is there anybody online from the public? Chris? Okay. I don't see anybody else in the stands or in the seats, excuse me. Baseball. I mean, we're just talking about baseball. So. All right. Let's move to items 5 and 6. And we'll try to do these together. And I'm actually gonna make a motion to table items 5 and 6. Those are the ordinances for LERTA in final reading. It was brought to my attention and a couple other members' attention just a couple hours ago about the impact as it's written to a ongoing development. And I think it will be wise for us to review that information and analyze that impact before proceeding with second reading. So I'll make that motion to table. Is there a second?
Point of order.
Yes.
Do we actually have to make the motion to open the item for discussion before we
From Norm,
can
no.
accept a motion to table?
Either way.
I did that because Norm.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'll make a motion to table the ordinance for commercial LERTA and the ordinance residential LERTA.
So you'll second my motion.
Yes,
Okay.
second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions on the motion to table 5 and 6? All right, here you see none. Mr. Lubin on the motion to table 5 and 6.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion to table passes 7-0. We'll move to item 7, final reading for ARPA transfer ordinance number 7. I would also make a motion to table this because this kind of goes hand in hand with some of the recent information that was just gotten a couple hours ago. And I think kind of working through a couple final things to do some additional transfers. So it might be, we have a second, might be wise to hold off on that one as well.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions?
Better to err on the side of caution.
All right, hearing and seeing none. Mr. Lubin on the motion to table item 7 as well.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Lizzie,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion to table item 7 passes 7-0. We'll move to item 8. We have a ordinance, a separate transfer ordinance for the band shell. This is transfer ordinance number 2. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Sander is with us. Good evening,
Yes.
sir.
Good evening, everybody. Hi, I'm above you virtually. What you have before you is a transfer ordinance for design fees for the band shell. They would be paid to Gannett Fleming. Last year, Gannett Fleming was contracted to do final design for the band shell in the amount of $47,400. The FCFP Foundation was able to pull money ahead I asked them very kindly to, and they were gracious enough to do that, pull it ahead from construction to design in the amount of 41,000. So that leaves what, 5,600. You have before you a resolution to pull a total of $9,351 from Act 13. As it is before you, it is correct. And Ms. Mealy and I went back and forth on this the other day and then via text today. So it is correct, as you have before you, a change for a total amount of $9,351 to come out of Act 13 surplus. So let me know if you have any questions. This was discussed yesterday in finance.
Thank you, Mr. Sander. This wasn't discussed in finance. Ms. Mealy?
Yep, and there was nothing too exciting to report. I was concerned this didn't look like any transfer ordinance I'd seen in the past because we were increasing 2 separate line items instead of decreasing one and increasing the other. But we are increasing the amount of surplus from Act 13 that we are appropriating for this year. And then by the same token, we are increasing the specific line to which we are transferring that funding from the reappropriated surplus. That said, I think our total design costs, according to Mr. Sander, are between like 75 and 80,000 on the band shell, which I think in the long run has turned out to be about a $600,000 project. The former head of our finance department, Joe Pavlak, and he had a discussion about transferring monies from other line items in the past that were to have covered the remaining $25,000. And Mr. Sanders not certain if the transfers ever occurred or not. All of that's in the dim and misty. Suffice it to say that we currently owe $9,000 to
Gannett Fleming.
it is Janet Fleming, anyway.
Yeah.
And this will take care of our final obligation to them. But some of the costs came out of our budget, but are not directly reflected in any line related to band shell design.
Thank you, Ms. Mealy. Are there any other comments or questions on this from members of council? Okay, here you see none. Mr. Lubin on the motion for item 8, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Lizzie,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. John, if you're still there, I don't know if I'm supposed to do this or not, but I'm going to, and I hope you'll forgive me, but you're off to greener pastures. You're leaving us, and I just wanted to thank you for your service and for your work the past couple of years. I know it's never easy working in government. It certainly has its challenges. We've individually had some disagreements, but nonetheless, I think there's been a lot of fruitful things come out of that. And it's truly been a pleasure working through that with you and working with you on a number of good things. You've made a difference, and I just wanted to wish you luck in your next role and commend your service to the city. So thank you very much, and wish you all the best.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure working for the city and also been a pleasure working for Mayor Slaughter as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. We will move to item 10, a resolution for real estate reduction. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Mackey, is he online? No, okay, he's not here. These are usually, I'll cover for him. These are usually pretty straightforward. So there's a court-ordered real estate reduction in front of us. We really don't have much of a choice here. Nonetheless, we have to go through the procedure of approving it. This was not reviewed in committee. I'll be honest, I don't know the background to this, but I think the fact that it's a court order is pretty straightforward. The typical soapbox applies. We really need a reassessment. Not only in the city, but in the county. This is a good time to do it. It's a politically unpopular thing. We have 2 commissioners that are not running for reelection. So I would implore Commissioners Musser and Mayor Beto to please consider doing this and getting that moving before you leave office. It would benefit the county and really help the city specifically. I'll leave it at that. Any comments or questions from members of council? All right, hearing seen none, Mr. Lubin, on the motion, please, for item 10.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Lizzie,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. We'll move to item 11, resolution to purchase network management monitoring solutions. Is there a motion in a second?
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. I will welcome Mr. Black to the podium. Good evening, sir. He's like, whatever. Nice, Chris. Good evening.
Good evening. How is everybody this evening?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. What you have before you is a resolution for purchase of some network and monitoring software from a company called Avic. They're based out of British Columbia, Canada. This would come out of contracted services for a total of $3,900 for this particular year. This will cover our network from end to end, from coming in the front end to the desktop.
Thank you, Mr. Black. This was reviewed in finance.
This was reviewed in finance without much fanfare. I believe Mr. Black mentioned that we had authorized a contract with another company for substantially more money, 65,000.
62,000. I looked it up this afternoon. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Resolution for that had been passed at the beginning of the year. The following day, I found out that a lot of what they were offering us was already taken care of through our Comcast services. So this picks up the slack of the difference of the two.
Mhm. Yeah. Consequently, right. So this is, I want to say you said maybe 85%.
At least.
Between this and Comcast, this takes care of 85 to 90% of the obligations that we have under our insurance for cybersecurity, et cetera, et cetera. So clearly a significantly more economical solution to the problem. And do we have a plan for augmenting that final 10%-ish of requirements?
Once I get our new server
Mhm.
infrastructure in place,
Yeah,
then I'll be able to do multi-factor authentication, and that's the final piece.
got it. Okay, so we do have a plan. Just,
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
yeah. That's
Awesome.
already built into the software that I'm using. I
Yeah.
just don't want to turn it on until then.
Right, got it. Okay. Yep, I think that was the totality of the finance review.
Thank you, Ms. Mealy. Any comments or questions from other members of council? Okay, hearing seen none. Mr. Lubin on the motion for item 11.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move to item 12, resolution for an agreement between Williamsport Bureau of Fire and McClure Company. This is a motion to remove from the table from last week's discussion. Is there a motion
So moved.
and a second to remove from the table? Second. Motion and a second to remove from the table. Any comments or questions on the motion to remove? Mr. Lubin, would you call the vote for removing from the table?
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, it is removed from the table. Chief, you're here. If there's anything you'd like to add, we did discuss this 2 weeks ago. I'm happy to speak to some of the background here, but if there's anything you would like to, I'd be happy to give you the floor.
Nothing more to add.
Okay. So this was discussed a couple weeks ago. There were multiple bidders I forget how many exactly, but the first and second bidders were looked at. And we tabled this to make sure that, I think just from a, legal process compliance perspective, that we're okay here, because we are awarding this to we're awarding this to bidder number 2, who is a little bit higher than bidder number 1. Bidder number 2 is McClure Company. The reason we're doing that is it was deemed that bidder number 1 was not responsive to our needs, right? And as a third-class city, per third-class law and procurement, we are allowed to do that. We are absolutely able to do that. We have documented, et cetera, that, so we are in the clear from that perspective. I think a number of us just wanted to make sure on the front end. What we definitely should do, I think, in the future moving forward, whether it's through our future engineer, however that is handled, maybe it's through a different staffing, or it's through codifying a process. We really should look at how we manage that communication specifically, because that wasn't, I would say, clearly communicated, but nonetheless, we are in the clear. Nonetheless, so that was a little bit of the background as to why we tabled this, why we are removing from table, and unless there's other items of discussion here, I think we'll award this tonight. So a little bit of why we're here, though, nonetheless, and for the public. So any other comments or questions? I tried to explain that, but by all means, jump in if I missed something. Okay. Hearing, seeing no other comments, Mr. Lubin on the motion for item 12.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion to approve passes 7-0. Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
By my notes, I think that covers everything. We'll jump to item 16, except for filing. We have the minutes from the Water and Sanitary Authority and the Controller's report from April of 2023. Is there a motion and a second to accept for filing?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions on the minutes we're accepting to file? Hearing, seeing none, Mr. Lubin on the motion.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item 17, announcements. Our next regularly scheduled city council meeting will be on Thursday, July 20th, 7 p.m. right here, Trade Transit 2. Our upcoming meetings, Wednesday, July 12th, 3:30 p.m. is our O&E Pension Board meeting. Tuesday, July 18th, 11:30 a.m. is Public Safety, 1 p.m. Finance, 2:30 p.m. Public Works, 6:30 p.m. HARB. Wednesday, July 19th, 9 a.m. Economic Revitalization, 10 a.m. Blighted Property. Thursday, July 20th at 10:30 a.m. is Zoning Hearing Board, and 7 p.m. is our City Council meeting. Are there any comments from members of City Council? Are there any comments from the public? Chief Unks, or I'm sorry, the administration. I got ahead of myself. Excuse me. But Chief.
I'd just like to make a thank you, send out a thank you to Mr. Mackey, members of the administration, the fire, police, codes bureaus, streets and parks department, Susquehanna Regional EMS, Lycoming County Sheriff's Office, Old Lycoming and Lowestoft Townships volunteer fire companies, South Williamsport, Du Bois Town and Nesbit fire companies, the Lycoming County Fire Police Team, South Williamsport and Lycoming Regional Police Departments, Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, and the many volunteers and organizations I failed to mention who came together to work in keeping the attendees of this year's Set the Night to Music safe. Thank you.
Yeah, I would second that. It was a great celebration and show, and I'd include our city clerk. She's on the planning committee to help with getting all that organized, et cetera. So I would thank all of those as well. It was a great night. So.
Yeah, I'll just echo that as well. And of course, Backyard is the premier sponsor, and thank them and Van Michael for their efforts in this year's show. Actually, Chief Snyder and I were just sitting here talking about that. We got a lot of good feedback this year. It seemed everything to go really smoothly, knock on wood, and other than a couple minor things here and there. So
Good.
I would echo those sentiments
Very
and
good.
thank everyone.
Very good. Any other comments from the administration? Okay. Any comments from members of the public? Any comments from the news media? None of them are here. Okay, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you all, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Derek.